So Aquaman, starring Jason Momoa. Yeah, so now Aquaman is cool again. Well, cool if you only knew him from Super Friends. If you know, because a lot of people like to make jokes at the expense of Aquaman. They like say like, oh, he's pretty useless because he controls sea life. But actually, if you've read like some of the comics, especially run by like Geoff Johns, who's actually doing the story on this film, some of the comics are actually pretty cool. I actually really dig them. So I was actually pretty excited to see an Aquaman movie, see how they go about it. Now, thankfully, here's the good thing. It's directed by James Wan, and he could have easily gone into just making this all like kind of just winking territory, just making Aquaman jokes the whole time, just stating the most obvious things that have been reiterated over and over and over. But he thankfully doesn't. I think Wan does exactly what you need to do with an Aquaman movie such as this, which is that, you know, if you're gonna do it, you know, you got to go into the lore, you got to treat it earnestly, but you can kind of like tongue in cheek it, you know, you can have fun with it, but you don't want to have too much fun with it. You don't want it to be like a straight up comedy. You want to actually believe in the action that's going on here, and for the most part, it actually really works. It's a pretty effective superhero film. So essentially, the film the film takes place like right after the events of Justice League. You know, Aquaman is still kind of doing his own vigilante thing on his own. He knows of Atlantis, but he doesn't want to go back there. He doesn't want to ascend to the throne and be the king of the seas. You know, it's like his destiny, but he doesn't want to do that yet. Which, by the way, I want to also mention this too. Like, I love the fact that how, like, with this film and Wonder Woman, I love that between those two films, it seems pretty cool that DC is trying to make very self-contained films that work well on their own. Because other than like a brief mention of Aquaman's fight with Steppenwolf, there's no relation back much to the other Justice League. There's no, so in case you're wondering, yeah, spoilers, there is no Batman, there is no Superman, there's no Wonder Woman in the film. It's just Aquaman's show, which is fine because there's enough going on here where we don't need to involve any more superheroes. Because what's happening is in Atlantis, there's a whole bunch of underwater kingdoms, and they've been kind of, you know, they've been kind of distant from each other. But they realize that, you know, our seas are being too polluted. You know, our seas and oceans, they're far too polluted. The surface world is going to attack us, and they're going to destroy us. We need to band together now. And currently in the throne for Atlantis is King Orm, who's played by Patrick Wilson, with kind of like the slick back Draco Malfoy hair. And he's very much, you know, about, you know, preserving Atlantis and, you know, making sure the surface dwellers don't attack them. So he's basically staging this war. Well, he's kind of like staging it so the other kingdoms have no choice but to join him in assaulting the surface. Now, he's also doing this because he knows that if he's crowned leader of this invasion, he's going to be the Ocean Master, which basically means he gets to control all the seas. Now, apparently, there are two ways to be like kind of like the master of the ocean. Either you get all the kingdoms to join you to invade the surface world and basically have like this giant alliance, or you can skip all of that by just going off to find this golden trident. And since Jason Momoa's character isn't as involved with Atlantean politics, he's gonna go looking for the treasure, which is fine. It's more his speed. Yeah, let's talk about Jason Momoa. Jason Momoa, he's still got that fun edge to him. I like the fact that he's not trying too hard to have too much fun here. Like, he's still much reluctant to Atlantis. You know, he's kind of like, oh, I still don't want to go here. I still don't feel right. I love the lineage that they build up here of his messy family history. How his mother, who's played by Nicole Kidman, she came out of Atlantis to escape an arranged marriage and basically hooked up with the lighthouse keeper, and had baby Arthur Curry, who would grow up to become, you know, the Aquaman. Now, here's the cool thing though, is I like how Wan keeps the most of this this backstory non-linear. Like, we get a little bit of the backstory in the beginning about, you know, how his mom and dad hooked up. We skip ahead a little bit to where William Dafoe, who plays Aquaman's mentor of Atlantis, basically teaches him all he needs to know about Atlantis, which, that's pretty cool. William Dafoe getting to be your your combat teacher, that's pretty cool. He's also an advisor to King Orm, so he's kind of working behind the scenes as well. And then you have, well, Aquaman, he doesn't really want to take up his throne. He does, I guess, maybe he doesn't like the term Aquaman as much, but maybe Mera can convince him to come back and save the underwater kingdom before the surface world gets invaded, because they mentioned in the beginning that the people of the ocean essentially make a preemptive strike by tossing all the garbage and all the ships onto land. So there's a whole bunch of crashed battleships and submarines on land there. That's actually pretty neat to see. But getting back to Mera, she's played by Amber Heard, and she embraces that green scaly outfit she's got from the comic books with the red hair. And I really hope that they would do something cool with this character, and they actually do. Because Mera's, if you've read her in the comic books, she's actually really cool. She's a character who has the power to control water, including the water inside other bodies, which is really cool, because there's a great moment in the comic books where she basically dehydrates someone. She has all this power of water, so she can easily dehydrate someone on land. And I was kind of dismayed a little bit that they made her kind of like a fish out of water, where she's not that used to the surface world, that she does dumb stuff like eat flowers and stuff like that. But I do like how she kind of learns to use her powers there. Like at one point she learns how she defends herself with wine, with just a whole room of wine, and because there's liquid in there, she can control it and make different kinds of weapons and stuff like that. So yeah, that's some pretty cool stuff there. There's a lot going on in this film, with the kingdoms and the history behind it, and Aquaman's lineage and the battle for the throne, and a giant epic battle, that it could easily overwhelm. But here's the cool thing, though. It seems like it could be like a Lord of the Rings style epic, that could have been like 4 hours long, and thankfully it's only, it sounds weird to say this, but thankfully it's only 140 minutes long. Which is actually good, because it actually crams in quite a bit of story here. Like, you get to know a little bit about the different 7 kingdoms underwater. You get to learn more about Arthur's lineage. You get to enjoy the sights of Atlantis, which is all bright and neon, and they got jellyfish structures and tortoise kind of spaceships and stuff like that. And I mentioned in my review, it kind of looks like if you took the world of Tron and shoved it into an aquarium. And I say that it relates to Tron because then you kind of got an 80s synth going in there, because 80s decoration and synth is all the rage right now, so you gotta cram that in there. I like the little battles for the throne they have and stuff like that, and in a ring of fire and lava on your water. That stuff's pretty neat. You have a great chase through across European rooftops, where Aquaman and Mera are just darting around trying to avoid all these Atlantean armored soldiers. You have a classic treasure hunting aspect, where they're pretty much in the desert, because if you're treasure hunting, it eventually always somehow leads to the desert somehow, with dusty traps, and little riddles they got to solve and stuff like that. Actually, that's probably one of the biggest qualms I have with this film, is that it never really settles on a tone, because when we're in the underwater kingdom of Atlantis, it feels like great fantasy, with all the neon lights and the 80s synth, and the battling families and warring races and stuff like that. It kind of has that cool edge to it. But then when we get to the desert treasure hunting, the tone changes completely. It goes all kind of like silly MacGuffin hunting type stuff. It gets more comical. It builds up a few more one-liners and stuff like that, and the music almost changes completely at that point. And then by the end of the film, of course, you do get a giant battle where you have all different types of sea life and warring factions. It's basically the Atlanteans versus a bunch of crab monsters, and there's a whole bunch of dolphins and sharks and whales and giant seahorses, and all these creatures attacking each other. Which it's aiming to be the biggest underwater battle ever. I don't think there are that many underwater battles in movie history, but it's at least trying to compete for Lord of the Rings in terms of scale here. Which, I mean, to its credit, yeah, the best part of the film is definitely the visuals. I love the look of Atlantis. I love how the giant battle looks. I love how it's very creative with their designs, with the armor. I also love the fact that they decide to embrace the goofiness of Aquaman, which kind of comes with a little bit of that tongue-in-cheek aspect. Because eventually, when you get into the third act, it's basically Aquaman saying, you know what, screw it. I'm going to wear the orange armor. the orange armor and the green fin gauntlets, whatever. I'm gonna wear them because hey, it's Jason Momoa. It's Jason Momoa, and I'm gonna don it. You know who's gonna talk back to Jason Momoa? You know, no one. I like the fact that King Orm by the third act, Patrick Wilson does put on kind of like the goofy Power Rangers style mask to lead into battle, which it's goofy, but you know, some stuff from like old tradition does look goofy, and I like the fact that he's trying to be a traditionalist. It's like, I don't care if this helmet looks goofy, it's going on. I'm going into combat. I also forgot to mention like some of the additional cast here, including I mentioned Willem Dafoe, who's great as kind of like, you know, the mentor of Aquaman, and then the advisor of King Orm. But I also forgot to mention Dolph Lundgren is actually in this film as another one of the kings, kind of like a long-haired, bearded king, who's actually pretty cool in the role. I love seeing him as kind of like this old king who's kind of a little bit stuck in his ways and very weary of trusting King Orm. He's also the father of Mera, so there's that relation to Aquaman there. Nicole Kidman is great as Aquaman's mom, who you know, they leave her death ambiguous, you know, so that can come up later. I also forgot to mention, I was talking a lot about King Orm, but you might have seen like in the trailers, or they also have Black Manta, who's played by Yahya Abdul Mateen II, and he kind of feels like an afterthought. Yeah, I think he just kind of fulfills that need for, it's like, okay, we need one more villain just to fill out the rest of this plot here, because the film actually kind of starts with him taking over a sub, and then Aquaman just kind of forgets about him, but it turns out that Black Manta is also, you know, he decides to work with the Atlanteans to, you know, to basically work on like, you know, like instigating a war, because they're basically paying him for it. But of course, you know, he wants revenge on Aquaman. And they kind of have a little bit of a skirmish there, but then they just kind of leave it on the shelf for maybe another Aquaman movie. Maybe, you don't know. there might be one. But the other thing that bothered me about the film was that, yeah, it does play up some of the silliness and the dumb nature of it, but there's just a few tiny things that really bother me. Like how can you have a film that it begins with Aquaman knowingly quoting Jules Verne, and yet it's later revealed in the film that Arthur Curry apparently didn't know that Pinocchio was a book before it was a movie? So I don't know, that seems just a little hard to believe there. I also found it hard to believe that, you know, that Mera's not that used to the surface world that she'd start eating flowers. I don't know. I don't think she'd be that much of a fish out of water, pardon the pun and all that. Because it does get a little dopey here and there. It does get a little overboard. Especially there's at one point where Aquaman finally takes over, you know, like the trident, and becomes the king of the seas, and he just kind of lets the chaos unfold for a little bit, just because it looks cool. Like at one point he's got to share a kiss with Mera mid-battle for no reason other than that, you know, they can kiss while explosions are going off in the background there, because that looks cool. But that being said, Jason Momoa was still fun in it. I love how he's kind of got this kind of like bar brawl aspect to him, where he only really saves submarines if it's fun, or if it's, you know, before happy hour and stuff like that. I love that he still drinks with his dad at the bar, you know, after he's done, you know, fighting the day. I love that relationship he has with his family. And I love, I especially love how they glaze over a lot of the backstory here. The backstory seems like it get bogged down really quick. But it's divided up really well, where it's very non-linear, so we don't get overwhelmed with it at times, where we have to memorize it all. And it's also shot with great transition too. Like it feels like bam, bam, bam. Just get the facts out about the history of Atlantis. That's all we need to know. Oh, there's crab people? Great. Oh, there's some piranha people that live in the trenches? Cool. Let's just keep going. And I love that fact. It's a great film if you get really bored with fantasy getting too much bogged down in exposition. Because just when it seems like the film is settling too much into exposition, it'll transition away to something else, like either Aquaman's backstory, or the history of Atlantis, or something else going on in the surface world, and then it'll come back. Or if it's getting too exposition-y, where it seems like the characters almost have something figured out, an explosion will come in. An explosion will just cap off a conversation. Which is great. It really moves for being over 2 hours. I actually really dug it. I don't think it's I'm debating whether it's actually I would say it's on par with Wonder Woman. I think it's a superhero film that is earnest and smart enough to know how you should stage, in the similar way that Wonder Woman staged its action around, Ares, the god of war, and Dr. Poison with their evil gas. I think Aquaman takes a similar route. And if this is becoming the template for DC's films, I'm cool with that. This is actually a pretty cool setup here. I love the fact that we actually get to enjoy some of Atlantis. That Atlantis has a lot of color to it. Even if you just look at the poster with Jason Momoa in the orange and Mera in the green outfit and the red hair, it's got a lot of color to it. It's neat to watch. It's got some fun chemistry here and there. Not all of it's organic, but it's fun to follow. It's a pretty fun adventure. It does Aquaman right, without making the obvious jokes about, hey, you talk to fish. They make that one joke in the beginning with little Arthur Curry, saying like, oh, he talks to fish, and then of course everyone shuts the hell up after that because, yeah, he controls fish. He also controls sharks too. So yeah, you may want to watch it there, but might not want to go swimming in the beaches when you grow up. How about that? So for Aquaman, 3.5 out of 5 stars.